Okay, so it is officially June now. It is like June 4th, which means I have less than a month to get ready to query, and I'm terrified. I am absolutely terrified. I know in so many ways I'm basically ready, but it feels like there's still so much to do. So I put together right here a list of all the things I still need to do and sort of like what my process has been for preparing to query, some of my, the research I've done, some of my references, and then what other videos I'm gonna do before I start querying, but it's really crazy to think about. Like, I feel like obviously there's a lot of distinctions in like what level in the process you are, but going from, a hopeful author who's just writing and hasn't started querying yet to someone who's in the query trenches, like, I feel like that's, I feel like that's a thing. I don't know. But yes, I'm ready to get started on everything again. I was out of town for a week for my sister's wedding, and then this last week has sort of been just catching up, getting the kids back into their routines. I sprained my ankle, so I was kind of stuck on the couch for a while, and yeah, it's been a little bit crazy, but I'm ready to get started on everything, and yeah, so let's dive into it. Actually, before we get into it, I want to put up, I guess right here, the status on my writing projects right now. It hasn't changed a lot, but I thought I'd show it anyway because I don't think I have in the last couple videos. But okay, back to query stuff. Okay, so I divided this into like 3 or 4 sections. So the first section I have on here is research on querying and the industry. So there's been a number of places that I've looked at for this, and I've sort of been keeping my eye on things for the last few years, so this isn't something that I've done like in the last week or that I'm gonna just be able to do this month. I think this all takes a lot of time and is definitely like the place to start well before you're ready to query, at least based off my experience so far. But so I've been watching some booktubers' anticipated releases, mainly booktubers that sort of read books in similar genres and subgenres that I write in, so that I'm kind of looking at that same, I guess, piece of the market, so I can sort of see what's coming up now, what's coming up in the future, in the next year, that sort of a thing. It sort of gives me an idea of like, I guess, the babyest hint of trends. I'm definitely not good enough to really understand the trends yet, but I can see some things. And then looking at best books of previous years for your genres, etc., watching all of that. I've been following a number of agents, editors, publishers on social media. I'll go through that list in a second. And then I've been just reading a lot of query guides, looking at querying advice videos, etc., by industry professionals. And so I wrote down my top like specific things that I follow to sort of learn about querying. The first one is a podcast that I actually had recommended. I did a interview with a newly agented author. If you look at that video on my channel, she recommended this podcast actually, and that's the Shit No One Tells You About Writing, which is by Bianca Marais, who is a best-selling author, and then the literary agents Carly Waters and CeCe Lyra from PS Literary Agency. And they sort of go through queries. They talk about the things that are good, the things that are bad about them, really dissect them. They go through first pages. And then they also interview people in the publishing industry, so like authors, agents, editors, etc. And there's always a lot of really useful stuff in there, so I like to listen to it when I'm driving, during my commute and stuff like that, maybe while I'm showering. And then the other big one I watch is the Bookends YouTube channel. I freaking love this YouTube channel. It's a sort of like blog format, but it's obviously a vlog from 2 of the literary agents. One is definitely a little bit more experienced, and one is like a slightly newer agent. I don't know if you'd call them newer, but newer than the other one. And they sort of answer questions every week. They talk about querying advice. They talk about advice for new authors in general, things like social media and what you really need to do, what to expect from offer calls, what to expect from the sub process, etc. Just like answering tons of questions like that, and their advice is really, really good. So I watch every single video that they come out with unless it's completely not related to me. Like they do some stuff on like picture book authors occasionally. I don't watch those because not really relevant to me, but other than that, basically everything they put out is great. The videos are super short. Highly recommend them if you just need like a quick 10-12 minute video. They're great. And then I watch a few authors on YouTube as well that are traditionally published. The big ones that come to mind are Alexa Dunn, who has like actual like querying advice, querying process, suggestion videos that I've watched. You can just look at her channel. And then Lizelle Sambury and Lindsay Puckett have both done like video vlog series on their querying journey. So you can actually watch it from like through their whole querying process to getting an agent and getting a book deal and everything. Like they both have, I think Lindsay either has, I don't know if her second book has come out yet or if it's coming out soon. And then Lizelle has 3 books out now. I think it's 3, and there's more coming out now. So like you can really see what that whole journey's like, and it's really great. And I like the way they talk about everything. Like it's just very approachable. And I think that's most of the sort of research that I've sort of done over the last few years. So the next part is obviously to work on the query package. And this is again something that I've been working on sort of slowly over time. I think I first really started working on this probably a year and a half ago when I was applying to, oh gosh, what was it called? Alexa Dunn runs a mentorship program called, I don't remember what it's called. My mind is blanking right now, but I don't think it's happened the last year or 2. But I applied to that author mentor match. Does that sound right? I think that sounds right. But I applied to that and you had to make like a query and everything. So I did that. I met a bunch of other aspiring authors. That's actually how I found my most recent, critique partner group. I've workshopped queries with them. I was selected to be a part of #10queries, which I will link. I did a video on that where I like shared it, but basically you get feedback from, I think they're editors on basically your query package. And so I got some really good advice there, and I also read through all the tweets in general that were put out for that, so all the sort of feedback from all of them. And a lot of those editors just kind of put out like general guidance of like, I see this a lot, you should do this, not this, that sort of a thing. And so that was all really, really helpful. And I haven't done the last like passive revisions. I have a high level idea of how I need to edit my query to really, respond to all the feedback I've gotten. So I'm going to go through and basically rewrite my query letter again with like the better structure. I find my query to be kind of complicated because I have multiple POVs and it's a little complicated how their stories sort of come together, but I think I really have it figured out how I need to do it. So I just need to rewrite that. I need to like touch up my bio, my comp titles. I did a video on using Chat GPT, GTP. I always say it wrong every single time, but to find comp titles. Which I can link below. It's also in this querying playlist, I guess, but that was a lot of fun. So I've read a few of the books there to kind of work out comp titles. And then I started looking at some of the submissions for queries, and there's like other things they ask for that I don't think I'd be able to come up with on the fly. So I'm going to sort of look at a bunch and then sort of pre-figure out that stuff. So like, what is your ideal like market for these books, like stuff like that. So I need to get all that stuff together. What else is on my list? Yeah, my query. Oh, I might need to put together a synopsis, although most of the ones I've looked at don't actually need a synopsis, but I'm probably going to need to tweak my synopsis. And then I'll probably want to like export my book into a format that I can more easily copy paste. Everyone seems to be all over the place. Like they want the first 5 pages, the first 10 pages, they want the first 3 chapters. Like it's all very different. So I need something that's in the right format. You know, I think it's Times New Roman, like double spaced, 12-point font, something like that. I need to verify that I can just copy from and be like, okay, you want the first 3 chapters? Here's the first 3 chapters. Boom. So I need to put that together. Yeah, I think that's everything I need to put together. And then I'll probably send that query letter to my critique partners again to get some feedback. A few of them have gone through the query process, so they've gotten a decent bit of feedback through that, and so they can sort of help me out a bit. So I'll definitely do a vlog probably on putting all that stuff together and talking about it a bit more in depth and like what query structure I'm going with in case you have a multi-POV book and you're curious about the feedback I've gotten. But that's like the second big section. So the next section sort of has a lot of subparts, but this is putting together my agent list that I'm going to query. And this is definitely going to be at least 1, if not like 2 or 3 videos on its own. I have so many notes on this that I'm just kind of scrolling through right now, but it's a lot. There's been a number of ways I've been sort of building up these lists, and I have a sort of really basic start of a list already. I kind of get excited about it every now and then, and I do some research, but I've been following the Publishers Marketplace deal announcements, and anytime I see a book that's sort of in the same subgenre as me, I note who the author is, especially if it's in a publishing house, that I'm interested in. So like Tor and Orbit, for example, are some of the big ones that publish books in the sort of subgenres that I write in. And so I'll kind of note that if it's clearly an agent that has a relationship with an editor at the publishing house, and I sort of keep track of that. I've been keeping a list. Anytime there's like a big book that comes out that I really like that's in that sort of subgenre area, I'll note the agent. So that's one way I've been keeping track of lists. Let's see, what else have I been looking at? So Publishers Marketplace, you can also look through Manuscript Wishlist, that website. I've been looking there. I've been on Query Tracker, which is very helpful. They have a whole like database and you can refine your search to genre. It's not super specific, so that's not sufficient to find out like if an agent is someone you should query, but it's good to get like a basic list and then you have to go through and sort of weed it out, but I'll get to that in a second. Oh yeah, one of my critique partners, they have a writing friend that actually is, I think they just finished querying or they're in the middle of querying their current book, and it's in a similar subgenre as mine, and she just like sent me her agent list, which is awesome. So it's just like a list of all the agents she queried or is querying, so that I can sort of, cross-reference them, see if I have them. There's a number that I didn't already have, so I'm looking at those too. So that was really, really nice. It's nice to have connections, people. Let's see. And then, Query Tracker is the other big one. Publishers Marketplace too. You can just go through all the deals and just write down the agents, so I'm pretty happy with it. So that's sort of the first part of building an agent list, and then I need to go through and pare it down. And I've done this like a little bit. I haven't quite refined the process. I'll probably do a video figuring that out, but let me know if you have advice. But basically, I've been coming up with a ranking system, and there's mainly two things I'm sort of ranking them on. The first one is how good of a fit I think I am for them. So if they say something specific in their manuscript wish list, they're like, I really want this, and my book fits that, I'll say this is a great fit. If they don't have anything specific in there, like they're representing my subgenre, but they don't have any specifics, or I can't find a manuscript wish list, or it's just so vague that it's like, well, it may be or it may not, I have a sort of, less good fit. And then there's like a middle of like, oh, I like sort of fit, but whatever. And anytime there's an agent that specifically doesn't represent my subgenre, like I do adult fantasy, so if they don't represent that, my first book definitely leans more towards epic fantasy, so if they specifically say they don't represent that, I cut them off the list. And then if there's anything in my book that they're specifically like, I don't want this, then I'll take them off the list too. But basically, if they represent the subgenre and there's nothing where they're like, I specifically don't want this that matches my book, I'm keeping them on the list. And then the other section is what their network of editors looks like. And I've mostly been looking at Publishers Marketplace deals for this, and I know that's not the only place to find it, but I'm basically categorizing it by like, big five imprints, other big publishing houses like Tor, Orbit, Hachette, some of those are on that list. So if they've had a deal at one of those publishers in the last couple of years, I give them that ranking, I guess. And then if they're more, I think I have like different categories for like, oh, they're a newer agent at like a publishing house that does have networks with like the big five, or if they're just like small houses. Like I have some like rankings, but I don't take them off the list for any of those things. Like if it's someone who, after doing a ton of research, I don't recognize their agency at all, and they don't have any like reputable deals with anyone I've ever heard of, like, and I've been looking at a lot of these pages, so if I haven't heard of it, it's like, it's probably pretty tiny. I've been kind of like, I give them a mark for that. I don't know if I've been taking any off the list for that. I'll have to decide, but I'm definitely going to sort of start with the more larger publishing houses. Because like, ideally, I would like an agent that at least has networking abilities with big five, or at least like bigger publishing houses whose names like I recognize. That would be ideal for me. Just in terms of what I'm looking for. Right, and then I have to go through and I'm going to have to like expand the list and add details. I'll sort of go through and make sure, confirm this agent, is looking for what I'm writing, seeking representation for, make sure that they're open to queries. I need to expand my list of all of them though, based off like their response time and all of that stuff. And what I want to do is make batches based on, you know, what their response times are, so that I'm sort of expecting to finish a batch around the same period of time, just because I think that'll be easier for me. Like, okay, I sent out a query batch. I'm not expecting to be done with this batch for 2 months, so I don't need to worry about it for 2 months, kind of thing. And then also, I want to create batches, an Alexa Dunn's strategy that she recommended in one of her videos, which is, I think it was pre-COVID, so I don't know how relevant it is, but she suggested going with first couple batches being the agents that have the quickest response times, just so that you have the ability to gauge how your query package is and make tweaks and update it and rewrite it sooner. Because otherwise, if you're waiting like 2 months and you're still sending like queries out and you realize like, oh wait, no one's interested in this, I probably need to tweak it, you don't need to wait that long for that. So I'm gonna sort of do that. Is that all my notes here that I have? Yeah, so I think that's all my notes here. But yeah, and I don't need to completely like finish every drop of agent research. Like, I have a basic list, and I've seen a lot of advice that like you really shouldn't have dream agents. Like, you don't know how good of a fit they're going to be for you or your book until you talk to them. So I'm trying really hard to like remember that. And so it's just kind of a list of like, these is just my big list of maybes, and either I'm going to query them or I'm not going to query them. And then, you know, I'll group them by response time. But other than that, like, I'm probably just going to choose 5, 6 maybe at a time, do my final research, send out the queries. And, you know, that's going to be a thing. And I think I'm going to film it when I send out those first queries, just because I'm so, like, I don't know, I'm so nervous, and I think it would be helpful if I could watch someone actually finishing it. So, like, I'll finish getting all the materials prepped, I'll show exactly what they need, where I'm, like, just kind of really go over the whole process of sending those, like, 5 queries. Just because I would really like to watch that from someone else's video. I feel like I see mostly videos that are a little bit more abstract and more general versus, like, I am querying these 5 agents. I won't actually name them, but I'm querying 5 agents. These are the number, like, I'm querying this one by form, this one by email, 3 through query tracker. They want this number of pages, this number, this is what their response time is, this is what their response percentages is, that sort of a thing. And just sort of really go through it and then, like, click the buttons. Yeah, it's crazy. And I need to find out how I'm going to sort of share my stats. I think I'll sort of, once I have my agent list put together, and I'll come up with how many of those agents I plan to query, and yeah, have that, the number of batches I plan on doing maybe, and then just sort of occasionally give you an update maybe once a month on this is how many queries I've sent out, this is what I've gotten response-wise, like just kind of share my stats a little bit. I don't want to say I'm pessimistic, but I am very much at peace with the idea that I am not going to get much traction here. And I've talked about this a lot in my other videos if you've watched them, but like, my book is a really hard sell for a debut. It is the first book in a trilogy, so like, you're already like asking for someone to invest in a full trilogy at least. It's longer than a lot of debuts, and it is like epic fantasy, so I know people say that that's more like leaning towards the 150k like word count in order to actually do epic fantasy, because it's really hard to do epic fantasy with less words than that. Like, it's really hard. So the fact that I'm over like 100,000, over 120k, I think I'm at 124,000 right now, but I'm still tweaking the end a little bit, so that might fudge a little, but it's a slightly bigger word count, which is a slightly bigger investment. And also it's less like commercially pitchy. I definitely wouldn't call it literary. It's commercial, not literary, but the pitch isn't as like, you say a single line and you're like, oh, that's what it's about. That's a great hook, you know? It's like, and I feel like this is the case with almost all epic fantasy, like it's just not as hooky because it's so complex and there's so much going on that you can't really just throw out a single line hook that encompasses everything. Like, it's just really hard to do. So I think that the odds of it being super great as a debut are kind of low. I think it's going to be less likely that people are going to be like, oh yeah, let's go with it. Like, I don't know. My other projects I'm working on are less difficult, I think. They're a little bit more hooky. They're going to be a little bit shorter. They're standalones that could be expanded, but they were written to be standalones. The scope of the world and everything is a little smaller. They're a little more character focused, and it's not multi-POV. That's the other thing. Like, I decided my first book was going to be a 4 POV epic fantasy novel, which at its longest was, I think, 177,000 words. Like, that's crazy. And then I've trimmed it back and rewritten it to be 124,000 words, but I've had to gut this book in order to do that. And I honestly, like, don't feel like I have the expertise to really know if this book is at the quality that it needs to be in order to get an agent. Like, it's hard because you compare your book against maybe what your other critique partners show you, but mostly against what's published. And it's like, I don't know what an agent is going to be willing to fix. I don't know what an editing firm, the editors at the publishing house are going to be willing to fix. I don't know exactly even what needs to be fixed, but like, I'm sort of at the point where I feel like I can't say at a high level if my story is everything it needs to be. It's everything I think that I can really do right now without learning a lot more and getting a lot better and getting more experience. Like, I don't think I definitively could say other things I need to do to fix my book now that I think it's broken, but like, I lack some confidence there because I just know how much I don't know and how little experience I have. Like, this is the first book that I have finished. Like, I have not finished another book since, like, high school. So I don't have that much experience doing it. Like, I've read so many craft books since I plotted this book. And I've tried to incorporate that, but it's like, I don't know. So, like, it's definitely ready. Like, it's time to query. Like, I've gotten it as far as I can, but I just don't know where it is. So it might be one of those things where I query and I realize, like, okay, either this is just too hard of a sell for a debut, or it just wasn't ready yet, which is fine. Like, I am 100% at peace with that. I'm really trying to think about this as, like, this is experience querying. This is me learning how to do all these other things, learn all these other skills I need to query successfully, because it's a whole different ballgame than actually writing and, editing books. So it's experience, it's one book. And every time you write a book, every time you plot a book, draft a book, revise a book, you're learning how to do those things better. So with every book I write, edit, finish, whatever, I am going to get better at doing those things. And at some point, I will get at the point where I'm like, I know this book is, like, query ready. I know this book is, like, good enough to get published, whether or not it's the right time for it or anything. But, like, I will get to the point eventually where I have that level of confidence and I can gauge that myself. But I don't know right now because I am wee little baby in the writing world. So yes, that is a quick vent, but long story short, yeah, I'm going to be ready to query in a month. I'm going to start querying in a month. And I'm ready and not ready and terrified and excited all at the same time. So yes. Yeah. So if you have any advice or thoughts or anything you want to see, comment down below. Like and subscribe if you like this video. And yeah, I will see you next time.